Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez Paz. We've got an off-season episode of Speaking Steagles coming at you. We've got plenty to talk about. NFL schedules have been released. Definitely a feeling like we're getting closer to the NFL never keeps off of our mind. So there's always something to talk about. We've got schedules. We've got some Steelers news we've got to break down. We've got some Eagles news we've got to dive into. All of that we're going to get to in today's episode. But before we do any of that, I asked my partner, Ricardo, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, man. Excited to talk about the schedule. It's off season, but at least we got news. We got stuff to look forward to. But yeah, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I can't complain. It was tough. My New York Knicks got eliminated from the NBA playoffs yesterday.
Right. Yeah, brutal.
Which, yeah, it's rough. So, a couple weeks after they eliminated your 76ers, my Knicks are done. And, that's that. So no more basketball anymore, but it's okay. I mean, that's kind of like my least favorite sport to watch of the big four. So we move on. It's close with hockey, but I don't know. I go back and forth between NHL and NBA, but we move on, and now we enjoy baseball through the summer as we also get NFL news periodically as we churn along.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, there's always something going on, even if it's just like minor. But yeah, man, it's a good time, man. Good time.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right into it, and we've got a couple weeks have passed since our last episode. We did kind of a draft recap episode, but we've had some news go down, and the biggest news that kind of came, and this came, I believe, a day or two after our last episode, which was the Eagles extending A.J. Brown, making him the highest paid receiver in the history of the NFL. Ricardo, what was your kind of takeaway or reaction to this move?
You know what's crazy is in the moment, I didn't have that big of a reaction. I don't know why. I think it's more just like I'm not shocked by it.
Yeah.
But I think we might have said this that with Devontae Smith's extension, there was a thought maybe AJ Brown could be moved on after this season. But I mean, those have clearly been put to bed after this extension. And I mean, you think about it, and it's just like how he just keeps extending this. Like he wants to keep. I mean, it's very clear he wants to keep this core on offense together for, the foreseeable future. Like now, I mean, you got Dickerson locked up, Mailata locked up, Jalen Hurts obviously locked up, Devontae Smith. Like that's 5 like big players that you have locked up for the next few seasons. And you even look at Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, them 3, they're locked up until 2029.
Yeah.
And these guys are like, you could argue, entering their prime years. So, AJ Brown's only turning 27 next month. Like, that's crazy to think about. That he can even still get another payday after this, but AJ Brown's been so good since we acquired him from the Titans. So, yeah, man, I just looking at it now, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you got the best 1-2 punch wide receiver duo in the league. And statistically speaking, and from an Eagles franchise, I mean, there just hasn't been a better duo the Eagles have had ever. So I'm glad that Howie Roseman's worked out an extension and he's really like emphasizing keeping these guys together.
Yeah, man. And I mean, A.J. Brown is completely deserving of it. I mean, he's a guy that I always thought was a little bit underrated, even back when he was with Tennessee. To me, it seemed like he had all the tools, and it was just a matter of him staying healthy and him, getting the ball, and also obviously a run dominant scheme. But once he came to Philadelphia, absolutely just exploding. And the Eagles reward him and they keep him. And I think this is also kind of just Philadelphia realizing like how much better their offense is and how much better he makes Devontae Smith. So keeping him around was absolutely a priority. And like you said, they are now set, at the wide receiver position, really kind of at their skill positions on offense for a bit. I mean, tight end is a little bit questionable, I guess, with Dallas Goedert, and he's not under contract for much longer. But when you talk about, having your quarterback locked up and then also having your 2 stud wide receivers and bringing in one of the best running backs in the game, paired along with extending two of the best offensive linemen in the league, man. I mean, this offense is like you said, certainly set. And I'm sure it's funny that you said like you weren't blown away by it when the move came, but honestly, it makes sense because it's like, how do you let a wide receiver who's a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL go? And the fact that he's only going to be 32 in 2029 as well. It made too much sense to bring him back, and the Eagles keep him here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and the other part of it is Howie Roseman just loves to get ahead of the curve, like ahead of like all these, because there are big time receivers that, I mean, Justin Jefferson, the biggest one who deserved paydays. I mean, T. Higgins. There's the whole bunch of lists, and he always is like really good at getting ahead because obviously it sets now a new marker for these other receivers. So I guess in theory he's saving money by kind of getting this done first. But it's just, again, smart, makes sense, and again, just thinking ahead, looking forward to the future, and right now too. So I just love how he's doing it.
I think that logic absolutely applies. I don't know if it's going to be with Minnesota, but I mean, Justin Jefferson, when he gets paid, could absolutely, get upwards of $100 million and all of a sudden become the new highest paid receiver. And just by getting ahead of that, you prevent AJ Brown from wanting to, top Justin Jefferson or, maybe whatever other receiver was going to get big money. So props to Howie Roseman for doing that, man. And the Eagles are really kind of setting things up for, this is the core that's going to kind of lead the way on offense for years to come. And definitely exciting stuff. But kind of switching directions now, somebody that didn't get an extension, and more than that, didn't even get a 5th-year option picked up. That would be Najee Harris, the Steelers declining his 5th-year option. If the Steelers had picked up that 5th-year option, it would have guaranteed him $7 million for next season. But the Steelers decided to decline it, which was honestly pretty interesting. I think a lot of people were caught off guard. I was caught off guard a little bit by it because I expected the Steelers to pick up his 5th-year option, just the way it seemed like the franchise viewed him as both, a talented player and as a leader in the locker room and on that offense. But I think if anything, this maybe shows their faith in Jaylen Warren. This shows that with the new offensive scheme, the Steelers are kind of going to weigh their options at running back and kind of reassess the direction they want to go in the offseason. But Najee Harris is a very talented player, has never played behind a stellar offensive line before. And it's a guy that the Steelers are now kind of rolling the dice, and I think taking some time to, and taking the season to assess if they want to kind of keep him around long term. Yeah,
I mean, it's I don't know about you, but I'm not that surprised about it considering, running backs, especially given last offseason, how they really weren't getting paid, and just the running back market has shifted so much to the point where, like this to me wasn't very surprising. And, running backs nowadays, it seems like they don't get drafted in the first round very often. And obviously Najee was 2021, but still, it's just one of those where it's like, all right, you got to play and play you're basically playing for another contract. And it's interesting too with the Warren situation, because I believe he's a restricted free agent after this year. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
I believe so. I could try and double check real quick.
But that'll be an interesting topic, an interesting thing to look at for Omar Khan in the offseason. But Najee Harris has got to go out there and I guess prove that he deserves to stay in Pittsburgh. But I just hate that it's just, for someone like Najee who runs so hard and who's had such bad offensive lines, and this season might be the best, will probably be the best he's had. I just feel a little bad for him and just the running backs generally. But
yeah, it's tough. I did double check. Jaylen Warren is also a restricted free agent after this season, so that was a good point you brought up there. But I really think that it's just the Steelers organization with Arthur Smith kind of just want to see, all right, if we're going to invest in one of these guys, let's get a season under our belt and see which one we feel fits the system. And honestly, if Arthur Smith isn't crazy about, keeping both of these guys around, maybe they kind of go in a different direction this offseason. Maybe they look to replenish in the draft. I mean, Ricardo, you know me. When they drafted Najee Harris back in 2021, I wasn't crazy about it. I wanted them to go offensive line at the time. I'm very much on board of, you can find running backs in the later rounds. You can find them in the third, fourth rounds, even later than that sometimes, and have them turn into studs for a couple seasons. But, the interesting thing to me is Tomlin has said how he sees Najee Harris as a leader. I mean, he was on Ryan Clark's podcast. I don't remember if it was last offseason or 2 off seasons ago, but it was when it was there. I think it was the first season with Kenny Pickett. So that would have been 2 years ago. But he talked about how he was kind of grooming Najee Harris to be that leader and almost kind of, he was comparing him to Cam Hayward in a leadership sense of what he saw in him, which just makes it interesting to me that when you can get him for, $7 million next year, a guy that's rushed for 1,000 yards in the first 3 seasons of his NFL career behind bad offensive lines, I lean more towards seeing them bring him, pick up his 5th-year option. Now, all that being said, this doesn't mean that they necessarily won't try to re-sign him in the offseason. But you kind of wonder, well, the way that this running back market has kind of been reset, like you said, if he has another decent year where, let's say, he rushes for somewhere in the 800 to 1,200 yard mark, I mean, even that being said, if he's still in a tandem with Jaylen Warren, which all signs obviously point towards that being the case, you have to wonder how much is he really going to be making a year? Could you conceivably get him for less than $7 million a year? And then also potentially extend him 4 years beyond that. I mean, it's just the unfortunate truth of the running back market right now. And you can also potentially, draft another running back at some point next season's draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not something to necessarily worry about now, but like I personally hope he gets re-signed, and I hope they can just come to terms and he stays with the Steelers for, I mean, I don't know, a few more years maybe. That'd be nice. Just because I like the guy. He's a hard runner. The dude's just all about football. He just, to me, feels like a Steeler player. I don't know.
I get that. I like him. I think Steelers fans, myself included, kind of have an up-down relationship with, his production because he is very steady, but sometimes you almost feel like there's another gear you could tap into that he hasn't at times. But I mean, the thing, $7 million is kind of the number that I'm hanging on. I mean, we saw the turnover, and I just looked it up briefly because Austin Eckler was kind of the example for me that came to mind. Yeah. Obviously, a little bit difference in ages, but Austin Eckler's only getting, about $4.5 million a season from Washington. So if you could potentially sign Najee Harris for, another 3-4 years, in this offseason and get him for less than $5 million or maybe in that range or less than the $7 million, maybe you do that, or maybe you decide to go in the direction of Jaylen Warren. So I think it's kind of like you said, ultimately at the end of the day, you kind of just feel bad for, the player in the sense that he's done enough to deserve to kind of get that option picked up, have the extra year of job security, and kind of get that $7 million. But that's just not the case. But hey, if he goes out there and has a big year, at his age, maybe he gets a little bit more than the $7 million. Who knows?
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch as the season unfolds, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't really have much more to add. The other thing on this topic is Justin Fields was the other player that had a 5th-year option. Yeah. Steelers declined that. Really no surprise there. He's the backup quarterback. I mean, the Steelers will assess him this offseason and see does he have the potential to be a quarterback for them down the road, but you're not picking up that 5th-year option that would have guaranteed him. I don't even remember how much it guarantees, but I know it's double digits, and he's just not worth that for a backup quarterback, to pick up that 5th-year option. So they declined that, and that is the case. And while we're on contract situations and extensions and all that, Cam Hayward has decided and said that he's going to hold out of all off-season workouts until he gets a new potential contract extension. This is a player that's never missed any OTAs, any training camp, any optional workouts. He has been at everything every offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout his entire career. But he's in the final year of his contract, which he re-signed back in 2020, I believe. This season he has a cap hit of $22.4 million, but he's holding out in hopes of getting a new contract extension. I can't say I'm necessarily surprised, but I feel like there is a little bit of a dilemma here, Ricardo, with the Steelers of what to do with him. I mean, you want to re-sign him, but this is also a guy who's, going into his age 35 season at a position where you don't really see high production out of guys when they get to this amount of time in the NFL and at this age.
Yeah, this is a really tough one because you also don't want him to leave, and you would rather obviously see him retire a Steeler. But yeah, I don't really know what to make of this either. I've thought about it. I'm like, okay, I can see where he's coming from. Obviously, one of the most productive defensive linemen the Steelers have ever had. Just great all-around player. But yeah, like you said, age 35 season, it's just like you're not really getting any younger. It's more of you're kind of on a decline at this point. No spring chicken, as you like to say, but it's really tough. I feel like there has to be. I mean,
well,
I don't know what he's looking for money wise. That's to me what I'm curious about.
So I have some information on that, and I will say that from my perspective, I don't blame him on doing this. This is probably the last shot that he has to really cash in, in his career. And I get that he also maybe wants the security going forward of, knowing, hey, I have an extension. I'm going to play for 2-3 more years, whatever it may be. And also, I think it's the fact it's like he wants to retire a Steeler. I don't have any doubt in my mind about that. So it also gives him the potential to kind of lock in, okay, I got, 2-3 more years and I can make some more money. Now, when it comes to how much money I think he can make, it's interesting because at 35 years old, I didn't even realize this until I read an article from The Athletic today, but he is the oldest defensive lineman currently on an NFL roster at 35 years old. I don't know if I said his age before. So really? He's up there in age. And to put it in perspective, last year, and like I said, this year his cap hits $22.4 million. Last year, Fletcher Cox, who was 33, made $10 million, and Calais Campbell, who was 38, currently not on an NFL roster, just to clarify that. He made $7 million last season. So to put it in perspective of what he perhaps wants, I mean, I think that Cam Hayward, the player, still views himself as maybe being a tier above Campbell and Cox. And where they were last year. And when he's healthy, that's true. But again, health is also starting to become an issue because he obviously missed time last year. And I'm not going to lie, that defensive line is definitely much better when he's in the lineup. There's no doubt about that still. So Sport Track projects his AAV or his annual value at $19.6 million, which, I mean, it's a lot of money for a player at that age. Now, here's the interesting comparison to me is Cameron Jordan with the Saints, who was in the same draft class as Cam Hayward. Yeah. Cam Jordan's a year younger, 34, but he got an extension with the Saints last year for 2 years. The entire contract was guaranteed at $28.4 million. So that's an average salary of $13.9 million a year, and that brings him through the 2025 season, at which he would be 36. So I don't know if Cam Hayward would be up for something like that, but I think the Steelers would be willing to entertain, a potential average salary of $14 million for Cam Hayward. That would get him through his age 37 season, and it would give him the opportunity to potentially retire a Pittsburgh Steeler. It would satisfy his wishes to get this extension, and I don't think that's necessarily an outlandish thing for the Steelers from a cap perspective to do either.
Right. I mean, 14 million, yeah, that makes 19's a lot. That's a lot.
19's a lot.
And I think he even said he has 3 seasons left in him, if I'm not mistaken. I think he said that. At some point, I know he said that. I read that somewhere.
Which would get him through that season we're talking about, his age 37 season.
Yeah, so 14, yeah, that sounds about right. 12 to 14 is probably what I was thinking when you said that. So if they can, come to terms on that, then I hope that Hayward would accept it, but
I mean, part of the interesting thing with Cam Jordan's deal is the fact that it's fully guaranteed even with injuries. The Steelers have never done that with any player before in the history of the franchise, so I don't see them starting that now, which may result in the Steelers are going to make it more like maybe 15, 16 million a year, but they have that kind of pullback that it's not all guaranteed. So it'll be interesting to see how the contract kind of ends up working out. I mean, Ricardo, I think you're going to agree with me with this. Tell me if you don't. But I mean, I feel like even after the draft, this was kind of the feeling I started to get with the Steelers is that next year, priority number one in the draft for them is going to be kind of replenishing this defensive line. They've started to do that with Keanu Benton, but I mean, do you agree that kind of that's sort of area number one of importance for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I thought it maybe, I mean, it wasn't a good draft class for defensive linemen. So, I mean, it definitely is priority number one next offseason.
Yeah, definitely going to be important. My gut is telling me that he does get a deal before the season starts. I think they're going to work something out. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's, kind of like when TJ Watt was up for that contract extension a few years ago. It started with him kind of at training camp. Remember that? That was our first season I think we did this. Mm-hmm. Now, if Kim Hayward said he's going to sit out, like I don't blame him if he's not there or anything. But I could see it being where like the Steelers really want him back at training camp and they get something done within the first week or two of camp and get him back out there. I mean, it's not like he necessarily needs to be there, but like we kind of said off the rip, the fact that he's never missed any kind of offseason workout with the Steelers, you got to imagine he wants to be out there. But I don't blame the player for trying to secure his financial situation first and foremost.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll see what happens there, but I kind of get that feeling too that they'll come to an agreement at some point. I mean, probably definitely before the season starts, but
yeah, for sure. So that's pretty much all the news we have with kind of the latest things happening with the Steelers and Eagles. But the NFL has released the schedules for the 2024 season. Let's break down the Steelers. Let's break down the Eagles. But before we do, I want to ask you, Ricardo, do you watch like all those schedule release videos that the teams put out every year when they release their schedule, or are you not really into that?
In recent years, I didn't watch them, but this year I was like, I'm curious. Like, I want to see what I'm missing out. I watched the Eagles one. That was cool. The Chargers one was really funny. But I don't know. Do you watch those or not really?
I don't recall ever watching a schedule release video for any team. Didn't do it this year. I don't know if I have in the past, man. And like, I was thinking about this today, and I was just thinking like, I don't really care. Just give me the schedule. But the more I've kind of thought about it, like, I am curious what I'm missing out on because it's kind of a pretty hyped up thing. I mean, so you liked the Chargers schedule release video?
Theirs was really funny because it was like The Sims, like the game, and it was you have that's the one that everyone was like just on so like Instagram and Twitter, like everyone loved it. It was so funny, but like
I'm gonna after this episode, I'm gonna watch the Chargers, I'll watch the Steelers, and I'll watch the Eagles release videos. And if I remember, I'll bring it up next episode what I thought of them. If it was worth my time or if I wasted 3 minutes of my life watching those videos. And I can go back to next season's schedule release, never watching them and just getting the schedule when it comes out.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, the social media teams are pretty creative. I'll give them that. So
yeah, that's fair enough. Maybe I got to give them some more love. But the other thing too with these schedule releases, like, and I know we were talking about this a little bit, like you find out these leaks beforehand. Are you like in tune with that? Like checking in on like any update, like, oh, this is what's going on. This is how our schedule's shaping up.
So just generally I have like Schefter's tweet notifications on and like Rappaport too. So like I see them, but I don't look too much into them when they're first leaked. Like kind of like you, where just like I just want to see it, and like then I'll believe it once it actually happens. But
because that I actually like when I see it pop up on my phone with the notification, whether it's a Steelers beat writer or like Schefter or one of those national reporters saying it, like I'll glance at it, won't put much thought to it. Like I remember seeing one like, oh, it looks like Steelers are in Atlanta for week 1. And I saw it and I didn't even really think about it. And part of that is that like, nothing's official until it actually comes out. But the other thing is I'd rather just look at it fresh with like, okay, this is official top to bottom what we have. That's how I want to digest it. I don't want to digest the first, I don't want to digest the week 1, 8, and 15 matchups out of the blue with no context to them because it matters, whether they're playing back-to-back away games or whether it's a Thursday night game or a Monday night game and all that stuff. I'd rather just look at it clean altogether and not kind of and that would be the worst if I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, week 4, they have a divisional matchup against the Ravens before their bye week. and then it ends up not actually being the case, and the leak was wrong. So
exactly. And that has happened.
I'm more likely to, kind of plan out watching the schedule release video than watching or paying attention to all those leaks.
That's valid. I mean, yeah.
I'm gonna give those on YouTube those release videos. I might be missing out on something really great that for years down the road I'm gonna really look forward to the schedule release videos.
You might. Who knows? Maybe you'll change your mind after these, but
who knows? All right, let's get into these schedules a little bit. Let's flip back over to the Eagles if that's good with you, and kind of jump into their schedule and kind of what stood out to you. I think at this point, most people have probably seen the Eagles schedule, but why don't you let me know any kind of big things that stood out with their schedule, or if there's anything particular you want to touch on here first.
So the very first thing I'll say, there's no gauntlet like we had last year. And I texted you this, that was like the first thing I was looking for. I was like, all right, I'm hoping we don't have like back to back, like just tough opponents or like, teams above 500. We don't.
Yeah.
The only time that really happens is weeks 8 through 10, which is the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Cowboys. Fine. That's our toughest part of the schedule, you could argue, but
which, I mean, honestly, Ricardo, like that's not even that bad. And it's interesting that you say that, because I actually thought if there was one spot that was tough for the Eagles this year, it was their final 4 weeks where they play a game against the Steelers, which, is a little bit of that Pennsylvania rivalry.
Yeah.
And then they also have 3 division opponents to close out the season. So important games. I thought that may be a tougher stretch, but again, the 3 of those 4 games were also at home. So, I feel like the fact that you saw weeks 8 through 10, I believe, and I saw the last 4 weeks as the hardest part, just goes to show you that there isn't that clear 4-week stretch that's just a juggernaut section.
Yeah, I mean, last season it was the Bills, the Chiefs, the Cowboys. Like that was just all. It was
brutal.
Grueling. Yeah, and then the Niners on top of it, like that's where it all came crumbling, crashing down. But that's definitely the first thing I looked at. But week 2 again. This is the 3rd season in a row that the Eagles are going to be hosting Kirk Cousins on primetime football. I don't know if you knew that, but it's just one of those really weird things where it's like,
wait, that's the 3rd year in a wait. How many years in a row is that happened?
3rd year in a row that the Eagles are hosting Kirk Cousins in week 2.
In week 2 on primetime.
Yes, I don't know why that is, but
that's actually like that's such a random stat that really like. It doesn't matter, but it's just kind of crazy that's actually worked out that way.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm like the schedule maker just for some reason love that match. I don't know. It's and some Eagles like beat writers kind of joke about it, like, oh, this is like the litmus test. Like if you beat Kirk Cousins, like you'll be good, or like something like that.
Yeah.
But that's also the first official home game the Eagles have, because obviously Brazil, week 1. So I guess they have like a mini bye there too, which is kind of nice. Just flying back, and they have a couple extra days of rest. But
let me while we're talking about the early part of that schedule, 3 games of the 4 to start. Obviously, early bye, which kind of is unfortunate. Nobody wants.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
It's the worst thing, dude. Anytime you get a bye before like week 7, it stinks. No one wants a bye in week 4, 5, or 6. I mean, you're still just so fresh. But the 3 of your first 4 games against the NFC South, which was one of the worst divisions in football last year, you got to be feeling pretty good about that, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's the part of the schedule where it's like, all right, you got to like stack up those wins, and I mean, you could say what you want about the Bucks game. It's like, oh, it's a revenge, matchup of the wild card where we got absolutely destroyed, but. That's I don't know. That to me, that's like the most interesting game out of all of those, out of the 3 probably of the NFC South. But because the Bucks are, I mean, they're a solid team. They're fine, but like they're not invincible. Like they're beatable. So that'll be an interesting one to watch, especially with Todd Bowles still there, and see how Kellen Moore handles the blitz. Sorry, Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson, but hopefully they figure that out at that point. But that's definitely a really interesting. I mean, those are winnable games essentially. But what else is there? I mean, just some other pros, I guess. This is the 11th easiest schedule.
Is that what it was deemed, the 11th easiest
Yeah,
schedule?
yeah. It's tied for like 21st, which is if you just flip it, it's 11th. But
Yeah.
let's see. The Eagles don't play a single opponent coming off their bye week, which last year I think they did
Wow.
twice. Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't. That's an interesting one. Last year was the Chiefs going into Monday night. There was, I think it was the Bills also, if I'm not mistaken. So that's nice that
Yeah.
no team against us gets extra rest.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, one other thing that stood out for me, as far as just watching the team, 5 primetime games and 5 games in the 425 slot. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to kind of watch the Eagles without having to worry about, other games that may be of interest. They're going to be kind of the highlighted game, really 10 times throughout the season, whether it's in that 425 slot or obviously being the only team playing in a primetime slot. So I'm excited about that because I hate when, the games conflict with the Steelers, and it's likely to happen less when the Eagles are playing in prime time or in the 425 slot. So that was kind of a bonus when I was looking at their schedule.
I think it's interesting that they have. I mean, I'm glad that it's kind of like spread out in the sense of like how many prime time, how many 425. I think it's even. I think they have 6 1 p.m. kickoff time, so that's like cool with me. Kind of just spreading it out a bit instead of like last year. It just felt like it was 425 prime time, more 425. Like it's a bit more. It's a bit more spaced out, I guess, if that makes sense. But
I get what you're saying.
People have their preference on that. I don't really care that much, but it's interesting. And let's see, the Eagles don't have to get on a plane after week 12, which is their trip to LA, and then they're done. They literally go to, the farthest they go is Baltimore and the Commanders. So, that's pretty nice to kind of end the season at home for the most. It's like 4 out of your last 5 are at home.
That's fantastic, man. That's always an interesting stat of like what team has like the largest amount of travel mileage, and usually it ends up being the Seahawks. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I imagine just for that fact alone, the Eagles are probably near the bottom when it comes to mileage they have to travel and everything. So that's definitely a bonus, especially at the end of the season like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like last year it was definitely a lot more on the West Coast. And that was when the gauntlet happened, and it definitely took a toll on the Eagles players. But
no doubt. I feel like this schedule is really set up for them to have some success this year. In the sense that it's a generally easier schedule, no gauntlet, not a lot of travel. Really, the only thing that's kind of unfortunate is the early bye, but that's kind of just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah, and I can't really complain because the last 4 seasons, I don't think we've had a bye earlier than week 7. So I'm like, at some point, it was going to happen.
I was going to say, since we've been doing this podcast, which is now we're going into our 3rd season. I remember the Eagles always having a later bye generally.
Yeah, they were usually like mid to late. So like, again, it was going to happen eventually. So just got to deal with it. But
all right. Well, Ricardo, I got to ask you. I don't know if you're crazy about doing this, but do you want to do the win-loss?
Yeah, let's do it. I did it anyway because I figured we were going to do it. So.
All right, let's and obviously, things could change. We're obviously going to probably give our season predictions when we get closer to September and the start of the season again. But just for fun, on May 20th, we'll give our win losses. I'm gonna keep track of them here. I'll write them down as we go along. But let's kick it off. I'll ask you just your thought, and then I'll just kind of give mine very quickly. Win loss, but week 1 in Brazil against Green Bay.
I'm gonna say loss.
Shocking
loss. Yeah, shocking
interesting.
Loss.
Losing in Brazil. This is actually a very interesting matchup. Off my gut, I'm going to give them the win.
I want to, but you'll see why.
Okay.
That's the next one.
Go ahead. Week 2, home versus Atlanta.
Win. Sorry,
You're
Kirk.
giving them the win. You gave it to me earlier. They're not Kirk Cousins. It's the litmus test. They got to be Kirk Cousins. Also, new system, like with Kirk Cousins still getting adjusted there. I like Philadelphia. On the road at New Orleans.
I give them the win.
You give them the
I
win.
think that'll be a close game.
I'm going to actually give them the loss here.
Fair,
On the road,
fair.
they've got 2 road games back to back. I'll give them the loss off the rip. Following that up at Tampa Bay.
I think they avenge their playoff loss and they win.
I think the same reason I'm giving them a win. Then we have the bye week. Then we go into week 6, home against Cleveland, a feisty Cleveland team. What do you have them, Cleveland team, Ricardo? What do you have them doing?
Jim Schwartz coming back to Philly. I think the Eagles just squeak one out. Deshaun Watson is nothing special. Let's be real. Like, if anything, the defense will keep them in it. So,
yeah. I'm going to also give them the win here. Then week 7, they are in New York.
Revenge game for Saquon. Oh, boy.
Oh, wow. That's a good point. In New York?
Yeah, ooh, man. I like that they did that one first.
Yeah, I like that too. That builds a lot more drama.
Yeah, in New York first. But, yeah, I'm sorry, Giants, but no, I'm not sorry. What am I saying? No, we're winning. Yeah. I don't care about that.
I also really like that storyline of the Saquon revenge game. And I also just don't think the Giants I think they're going to be better than last year, but I still see the Eagles being able to sweep them. I'm giving the Eagles the win.
Yeah.
Back-to-back road games, this time at Cincinnati in week 8.
This is where we lose. I'm sorry, but Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow, like, I hope this is I think it'll be a good game, but Joe Burrow, I think I don't know. I really like watching him, so I think he's just a good player. I hope he stays healthy because this will be the first time they face off, him and Jalen Hurts. So I think Burrow just gets the win.
This one's interesting to me. I kind of go either way. I'm going to give the Eagles the win, especially because that's going to help the Steelers in the division. So
that's fair.
they get the win. Week 9 back home against Jacksonville.
Doug Peterson back again. We're going to beat him again. So sorry, Doug.
Ricardo's giving him the win. I think the Eagles are eventually going to lose a game at home, and I'm going to have it be here in week 9 to the Jaguars. Doug Peterson getting the revenge in my book on this one. But all right, then we go to week 10, first game against Dallas, this one in Dallas.
We haven't won there since like 2017, so it's not changing. Dallas is going to win that.
All right, you're giving them the loss. I'm also going to go with the loss, just kind of the same reasons you said, but then a chance to maybe bounce back at home week 11 against Washington.
Yeah, that's a win. Come on.
I mean, come on, rookie quarterback. I'm also giving the Eagles the win there. Then, like you said, the last time they have to hop on a plane for the season, week 12, going to Los Angeles, taking on the Rams.
Oh, see, I don't know. This one was a toss-up for me. I'm going to say a loss.
This is good. This is a feisty one here. You go from a Thursday nighter the week before against Washington to a Sunday night game the following week in Los Angeles. I'm also going to give them the loss there. This may be when you kind of, late November, you're getting into the dog days of the season, and that's one that tough game. The Eagles try to kind of grind it out, but they don't. I give them the loss. Then another kind of back-to-back road games, week 13 at Baltimore.
I give them the loss. Back-to-back losses. I think this is the only time I'm doing this. So that defense is just too good, man. And that'll be a fun matchup too. It's 2 mobile QBs. So I think Baltimore wins though.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm gonna give them the win here.
Of course.
In week 13. I think you know my reasoning as to why I'm doing that. But they sweep the 3 AFC North teams not named the Pittsburgh Steelers to this point of the season. Let's go to week 14 where they're back home against Carolina.
I mean, that's just that's a bye week, man.
you gotta win. I will say, last year when the Steelers played at home against the Arizona Cardinals, I said that was a bye week, and that was what started the downward trend for the Steelers. So
that's true.
I'm not going to say that, but a matchup that you'd like to see the Eagles win handedly. I'm also giving them the win.
Yeah, for sure.
Week 15, the showdown, Ricardo, at home in Philadelphia, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. These 2 teams played 2 seasons ago as well. Yep. What happens in this matchup in December, Ricardo?
I see the same result. Maybe not like you guys getting destroyed again, but like I think the Eagles will come out on top of this.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm going to give the Eagles the win here. Looking at it from the Steelers' perspective, there's going to be some losses. We'll get into the Steelers' schedule. Ultimately, Eagles win.
Yeah. I think it'll be
Let me
good.
just hop back over to the schedule. And then on the road, last road game of the season, week 16 at Washington.
Another win.
It's basically Philly's like alternate home field at this point. I mean,
literally
it feels
is.
like they never lose to Washington on the road.
No. There's so many Philly fans that show up there. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, week 17, final game against Dallas at home.
We're gonna split and we're gonna win. So that'll be
also
huge.
giving them the win. I'm giving them the split, and that may just win the division for the Eagles. The way that this is shaking out for me. But they have one last matchup at home against the Giants week 18. I think I already know where you're going with this, but tell me anyway.
Yeah, a win. Another win.
It's a win. All right, so let me tally these up here real quick. 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. 11,
By the way, that's 5 wins in a row at the end of the season. So the total opposite of this past
of
season.
last year.
Yeah. So hopefully that actually happens, but you never know with this team.
All right, so in our May 20th edition of the Eagles schedule, you have them going 12-5. I have them going 13-4. Our only differences were week 1, I have them winning. Week 3, I have them losing. You have them winning. And then weeks, oh boy, this is weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Week 7 and 8 were flipped, and then I'm not going to keep going with this exercise. You get the point. We're one game off. I didn't write down the weeks on my list here, so I'm not going to count through them all. But definitely a schedule that I think the Eagles can really kind of come away with a very good record, good enough to win the division. I mean, this is something we'll get into later, but a different team has won the division every year in the NFC East, going back however many years. You might. Do you know how many years going back and now it is that a different team's won the division?
20, I believe.
20 years. That's crazy. That's longer than that's before we even started watching football, Ricardo.
I was gonna say we were toddlers.
Yeah.
When that last happened.
And I think that trend's going to continue here. I think this is a schedule that the Eagles can win.
Yeah.
Dallas has had some turnover in their roster. I like the Eagles to win the division with this schedule and the team they're bringing back. So, yeah, sounds good. Let's flip things over to the Steelers and talk about their schedule a little bit, as theirs is not quite as welcoming as the Eagles. We're going to get, Ricardo, early on in the season, a very good look at the new-look Atlanta Falcons as the Steelers play them week 1 and the Eagles play them week 2. I don't know why that just kind of came to mind for me. But one of the first things, I guess the first thing I got to talk about, it's not the first thing that jumped out to me, but it's the talking point when you look at the schedule, is just the gauntlet to close out the season. A brutal final 8 games.
Yeah.
Every single division game for the Pittsburgh Steelers is in this final 8-game gauntlet. And I guess we'll just go through it. Starting in week 11, the Steelers are home against Baltimore, at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, home against Cleveland, at Philadelphia, at Baltimore, home against Kansas City on Christmas, and then home against Cincinnati. So, I mean, all division games. You've got 2 sets of back-to-back away games. You've got, outside of the division opponents, the 2 teams out of division they get a break from happen to be the Eagles and the Chiefs, who were, just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So it's as brutal a stretch of games as you're going to get to close out a season starting in week 11. And that's really what's going to make or break the Steelers season, in my mind, is going to be how they either, can kind of hold their own or maybe just keep the ship, close enough to above water in that stretch.
Yeah, this was the first thing I texted you, man. And I was like, my God, like this is way worse than like the Eagles last season. Actually, no, I think I might have said it was a little less, not as bad, but actually it is worse because it's the magnitude of these games are way bigger. Like you're facing your division rivals twice. Like I don't know if I've ever seen that. Like I don't know if
I've ever seen it either, man. Like
insane.
The fact that all 8 of your division games are in the final 10 games of the season is crazy. Or I don't know if excuse me. All 6 of your division games are in the final 8 weeks of the season. That is crazy. There's so much. I mean, I guess the thing that you can kind of say, if we're going to find any sort of consolation in this, is that at least then hopefully you kind of have your identity and all the kinks are worked out with your team and how you win football games, that you can kind of go in there full steam. But I mean, the same can be said for their opponents. They're going to hope that they have their identity and everything figured out by that point as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, yeah, man, I mean, I've seen a lot of comments on this and just like, this is crazy and how insane this gauntlet is. But I don't know, but it's not. I'm not, obviously you're not going to win every single game, but these are the kinds of games that I just feel like are going to come down to the wire. And the thing with the Steelers is, it seems every season towards the end specifically, they figure it out. They just find a way to win. It's just like they play their best football at the end. So maybe this is a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it bodes well for their playoff hopes. But
I don't dislike your logic there, man. And the other thing I'll say is Pittsburgh, the way that they want to play football, of the just kind of dominate you in the trenches, run the football down your throat, control the time of possession, and have it come down to the end. I mean, they're going to be in a lot of close games this year. And when you're going against high-powered offenses like Baltimore or Cincinnati, Kansas City, Philadelphia, that's a formula to potentially win games late in the season, that are really going to be important. I mean, maybe you get some cold weather games. Nobody likes playing in Pittsburgh in late December. Yeah. So, maybe there is some consolation you can take out of this, where if you got to play your tougher games, play it when you have your identity figured out, play it when the conditions are going to be adverse for your opponent, play it when you're going to, have your offensive line as gelled as it's going to get all season. I guess there's bright ways to look at it, but man, it's just like there is going to be no breath for the Steelers after their bye week. There is no time to kind of take a breath. And I guess you never want to be playing like that, but maybe the one good thing too is last year, maybe at times it almost felt like the Steelers were overlooking opponents. I bring up the Cardinals earlier in this broadcast as that potentially being the case. There is going to be no looking past an opponent or looking past a game. Every single game, you bring up the adage, it's a game you circle on your calendar. They're circling every single one of the last 8 games on their calendar as being big. So very important. And I think that kind of means it's going to be really important for this team to get off to a good start and, come away from the first 8 weeks of the season before their bye with a record well above 500.
Yeah, that they got to stack up the wins, similar to the Eagles, but the Steelers obviously to a much greater extent. Yeah, they really got to stack up those wins early on in the season because, it's just the schedule at the second half, man. It's just there's no breath, like you said.
Yeah, definitely going to be a challenge. But I guess, I will say, even with this gauntlet of a schedule, when I looked at the schedule top to bottom, the first thing I looked at and kind of caught my eye is I kind of was sitting there and I was like, oh, like week 9, that's not a bad time to have a bye. So funny enough, that's what caught my eye first. So I do like that, they do get that bye week before they kind of start that gauntlet to close out the season and, hopefully, get guys right and kind of reset a little bit. So that's kind of where things sit. And I guess the one other thing, one other thing that kind of caught my eye is like, you think the way that the season ends, they have an easy start to the season, but they still have to play 3 of their first 4 games on the road as well, which is no gimme either. So another challenge there, but hey, I mean, this is a Steelers team that's going to try to win in a scrappy manner and, pound the football. And why not give us a hard schedule? If the Steelers are going to win, they're going to have to be able to run the ball against anybody. And that's certainly going to be tested this season all along. So that's kind of something that caught my eye.
I mean, the way the Steelers come out of this regular season is going to tell us, I mean, especially the second half, it's going to tell us a lot about whether this team can make a run in the postseason or not. But it's I feel your pain. I feel what you're going to go through. Like,
it's tough because I feel that even if they get mediocre to decent quarterback play, this roster is perfectly capable of competing for a division title. I truly feel that. The way the schedule aligns, this certainly makes it tougher. But I don't know if you have any other takeaways from this. Otherwise, we can kind of play the win-loss game again here.
The third hardest schedule. The other thing, I guess, is the Baltimore. I mean, you guys are playing Christmas Day, which
Yeah.
that's cool. I mean, it's Christmas is on a Wednesday, and it kind of acts like a Thursday night game because you guys are playing the Ravens on a Saturday, and
Yeah.
so you basically have 2 Thursday nights, which isn't great, I guess, but the
And then
rest
it does give you some time to kind of prepare, for extra time to prepare for that last game of the season, given that it's a Wednesday, like you said.
Yeah.
For their final game against Cincinnati.
One other thing, you actually get extra rest against the Bengals twice. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that could be huge too. The Thursday night
Absolutely
game and then the Christmas game, like you have a couple more days than the Bengals will. So
Yeah.
could be helpful.
And like you brought up, third hardest schedule, just to kind of put an exclamation point on everything. I forgot to mention that, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Another interesting quirk I found is back-to-back games at home leading into the bye against the 2 New York teams. So just interesting. I mean, it would have been great if one of those was on the road and I could like watch the Steelers in New York, but whatever. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
And hopefully being at home for those 2 games bodes well going into the bye. But let's play the win-loss game this time for the Steelers. I will kind of start this time around, and then we'll get your opinion as well. But let's open it up against Atlanta, against Kirk Cousins, against the new look Falcons. Look, new system, new quarterback, new head coach. That's going to take some time for everything to gel. And I think if the Steelers come out and control the time of possession and get a couple stops on the Falcons, this is a game they can win on the road. I have it as a win for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I also have it as a win for those reasons too. But yeah, that'll be a good one. And it's also Arthur Smith returning to Atlanta. So
yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't even bring up that point. That's so true. We'll go to week 2 where the Steelers go on the road to Denver, playing in the tough conditions. I think this game is going to be closer than maybe you'd think with, the current quarterback situation for Denver, whether it's Bo Nix or one of the other kind of journeyman quarterbacks they have in there. I think it's going to be very close, and the Steelers narrowly eke it out. I'm going to give them back-to-back wins on the road.
I also will, and Russell Wilson returning to Denver. I can't wait to see that. Sean Payton, just that on its own is
the storyline, man. I mean, it's like you talk about the Saquon revenge game. This is the Russell Wilson potential revenge game. I think that they're going to find a way to win this one in Denver.
I agree.
It's similar to like when Nathaniel Hackett with the Jets last year. That team found a way to win for their offensive coordinator when they went up against Sean Payton after everything he was saying about Nathaniel Hackett's lack of coaching ability in the offseason. So, that's kind of the way I see it going. Let's go to week 3. The Steelers' first home opener against Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, and the Chargers. I actually am going to give this a loss here, even though it's at home. Just because I think there's going to be some home games that they end up losing, and I'm going to have this be one of them. So I'm going to give them the loss here in the home opener.
Okay, so I feel like I know where this is going after this week, but I'm going to say the Steelers win.
Okay.
First, their home opener. So,
all right. Then we got week 4 at Indianapolis. I'm going to give them a win, 3-0 on the road in Indy. I just think back to last year, and every season is different, and I think that's especially true in the NFL. But the way that Indianapolis just absolutely ran down Pittsburgh's throat when they played last season, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to repeat that, and I think it's going to be a turn of fortunes, and the Steelers run down the throat of the Colts in this week 4 matchup.
See, I have them losing now, and I think I think it will be a close game, but I don't know. This to me just Anthony Richardson. I don't know. I hope he's healthy. He could be tough to stop if he is healthy, but I don't know.
It's all a question. Are they going to win? Are they going to win? All 3 of their road games to open the season in their first 4 weeks.
That's tough.
That's what we'd also both be saying if we give this win here. I'm going to give it to them, though.
All right. I'll give them the loss.
Okay. Then they come back week 5 at home versus Dallas. Tough opponent, primetime game. I'm going to give them the win, Ricardo.
Yeah. I like that, especially against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I had this as a loss, but
Okay.
I'm gonna say it's a win because
Oh,
well,
you're gonna flip it. You're gonna flip it.
I'm gonna say the Steelers win.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do.
Okay. Sounds good. So then we go to week 6, at Las Vegas on the road. I'm gonna give them the win here.
Yes.
The quarterback situation for Vegas is tough right now. I just see Pittsburgh stymieing the Raiders offense and getting the win against the more inexperienced team.
Yeah, I agree. That's gonna be a win. The Raiders are not good.
Then we go to week 7, hosting the Jets. I was at Pittsburgh's last. I was in Pittsburgh 2 years ago when I watched Zach Wilson and the Jets win in Pittsburgh. And I just can't have that happen 2 times.
Yeah.
Not in an exercise like this. I was originally thinking that this would give this a loss, but as I say it out loud, rehashing those memories of my first game, at Heinz Field, now Acrisure Stadium, being a loss to the Zach Wilson-led Jets, I'm going to say the Steelers get a victory over the Aaron Rodgers-led Jets.
I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna go opposite. I'm gonna say the Jets squeak one out. I think this will be a defensive battle, and I think the Jets just take this one.
It's fair enough. I understand the reasoning. I mean, I was honestly leaning loss, but I when I say this all out loud, I can't give them a win. Right?
That's fair. That's valid.
And then, like I said, back-to-back games hosting New York teams. They host the Giants on Monday Night Football. I'm going to give them a win again here. I'm going to have them start the season 7-1 with their only loss being at home to the Chargers.
Oof, I mean, they need that kind of start. I'm giving them the win too. So I have them 6-2 to start.
So, I mean, either way, 6-2, 7-1, I would be thrilled with that kind of a start. And yeah, it's going to be kind of important because week 9, they have the bye. And then we start to get in, not quite into the gauntlet. Week 10, they're on the road in Washington. But I mean, you give Mike Tomlin and the Steelers an extra week to prepare for the Commanders. Even though it's on the road, I'm giving the Steelers the win.
Yeah, sorry, Jaden Daniels, but Steelers are winning that.
All right, week 11 at home, Baltimore. Big game. I'm going to give the Steelers the win here too, man. I mean, a division rivalry. You'd think to have a shot at the division, you got to at least split with Baltimore. So that's the way I'm going to go here.
Yeah, you definitely have to split at the very least. So I'm going with the same logic. I'm going to say they win.
All right. Now we go to Cleveland, a Cleveland team that the Steelers have struggled with in the past on the road. That Jim Schwartz defense has caused problems for the Steelers. I am going to actually give this one to be a loss. It's a short turnaround. It's a Thursday night game. You come off an emotional game against Baltimore. I'm going loss.
Yeah, I'm same logic again. I'm going with the Browns. But
all right.
Only just.
Back-to-back road games. This time, it's going to be at Cincinnati. Another tough division game here. I'm going to chalk this one up to a loss. I mean, if Joe Burrow's back and healthy, they're certainly going to be in contention for the division. I'm going to give the Steelers back-to-back losses on the road here, hitting a little snag in their schedule.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. It's going to be a tough back-to-back road games, and yeah, another loss for the Steelers, but
giving them the loss. All right. Then we go to week 14 back home against Cleveland. I'm going to have them kind of flipping the script, splitting with Cleveland, getting the win here.
Yep. Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So, Ricardo, I'm just going through this now again. Weeks 12 through 16, they have road, home, road. So they're playing 4 road games in 5 weeks over that stretch, just within this section, man. I mean, it's just emphasizing how brutal this stretch is. But then we come back and we've got the Pennsylvania game at Philadelphia. I mean, you already heard it from me. It was a loss when we did the schedule exercise for the Eagles. You're doing the same?
Yeah.
All right. So we will keep things chugging along here. Then the Steelers at Baltimore in December. This one is tough, man. I'm gonna have to give the Steelers the loss. I hate, the Steelers are they've done well playing in Baltimore in recent years. They've been one of the teams that have been able to kind of control Lamar Jackson, but I'm going to give them the loss here just because this is such a tough portion of the schedule.
I'm with you there. I feel like either way, it's going to be a split. But yeah, I think it's a loss here.
All right. Then we've got the the Christmas game where they are playing at home against Kansas City. For as nice as it would be to get a win here, my gut's telling me it's going to be a loss. Patrick Mahomes, primetime Christmas game. It'll be tough, but the thing I'll say, while I'm giving them a loss, I think that this is a game that's going to be a real test for Pittsburgh and how legit they are for potentially being a playoff team. Especially when you think back to, 2 years ago when they lost to was it 2 years ago they lost to Kansas City in the playoffs? I don't remember, but
it was. Yeah.
It was 2 years ago, and I mean, if I remember correctly, I think they just kind of got blown out a little bit. I think this is a game that's going to be close, and they're going to hold their own and kind of show teams, hey, Pittsburgh can win a game or two in the playoffs. It'll be close, but I have Kansas City eking it out.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I can't bet against Mahomes.
Yeah. And then to close out the season against Cincinnati, I have the Steelers getting the win.
Same, as did I. So
8, 9, 10. All right. You have them getting the win as well. So let's tally this up. 3, 4, 5, 6. I have them going. Well, I'll tell you in a sec. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have the Steelers going 11-6, and you have them going 10-7. We are in lockstep, Ricardo, on everything except for. Oh boy, I'm going to try and do this again here. Let's see if it happens. Except for week 3 and 4, where I have them beating the Chargers, and I have them losing to the Chargers and beating the Colts. You have that flipped, and then also week
7
against the Jets. I have them winning, and you have them losing. So that's where the real difference comes. But 11-6 could be enough to win the division. 10-7, I don't know. Hopefully, still good enough. It feels like in today's NFL, you need at least 9 wins to have a shot at the last wild card spot. 10, you'd feel pretty good about it. So we'll see. We'll have plenty of times to analyze this. You never know what kind of injuries might pop up before the season actually starts, and then obviously throughout the season. But on May 20th, I have them at 11-6. You have them at 10-7. So fun exercise, and we will see how things continue to shake out. But Ricardo, I think we've kind of hit the end of the road here with this episode. Do you have any final thoughts as we close things out?
No, let's hope our teams can live up to these records and we don't look stupid in the end.
Yeah, that would feel good. Both of our basketball teams are done for a little bit, but at least you have the Philadelphia Phillies and I have the New York Yankees to enjoy for a little bit. Yeah, both teams cruising. I think it's first and second best records in the entire MLB right now.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, look at the Speak and Steagles baseball teams go. All right. We'll have more to break down in our next episode. Not sure when that's going to be, but anytime there's more news, we'll be breaking it down. Eagles OTA started today. Steelers start tomorrow, so we're sure to have some more news. Ricardo, we'll talk soon. Thank you, everybody. Peace out. Bye-bye.